Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved brother Ranga, beginning with the paragraph, but before we can turn to the psychological and practical conditions.
Right. So, before we start reading the para, I'll tell you in brief what he has said earlier so that we get the sense of continuity. Okay, so in the previous para, he has said, we can then posit 8 principles instead of 7, and they can be arranged in 2 groups, the upper hemisphere and the lower hemisphere, in such a way that they become mirror images of each other. That we have seen last time. The upper hemisphere is the existence, consciousness and bliss. The Sanskrit words Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. And the lower hemisphere is the matter, life and psychic being and mind. Okay?
Upper hemisphere is also the...
Sorry. The supermind also is there in the upper. The upper existence, consciousness, bliss and supermind. Yeah. And in the lower hemisphere, the matter, life, psychic being and mind. And if you draw corresponding lines, you will see that it's a mirror image. The highest becomes the lowest, and the lowest in the higher hemisphere becomes the highest in the lower hemisphere.
You gave us a drawing of
Yeah, that's right. So, that's right. Then he says that the divine spirit descends into matter and becomes involved in it. You don't see it anymore, just like the tree is involved in the seed. Man ascends from the base of matter to go up to the supermind and beyond into the spirit. Okay? The 2 hemispheres meet at the supramental level, and a golden veil separates the 2 halves. That veil has to be rent so that the spirit can openly be present on earth and man ascend in consciousness and live the divine life on earth. If there be any goal and aim for the evolution, apart from the individual ascetic liberation which rejects earthly life through disgust, it is this, that the divine life on earth become a living reality. So, what he means is that yes, even the ascetic, he has got an aim in life. And the aim is to escape from the lower hemisphere. But apart from that ideal, there is another ideal which is the integral ideal, that is to join the 2 and have a divine life with the higher hemisphere, the psychological characteristics of the higher hemisphere in the lower hemisphere. You don't reject the lower hemisphere. This is what he has said. In other words, the divinization of life in matter itself. So, now he is talking about what are the conditions by which this transfiguration can be done. Okay? And this discussion will go on for 10 chapters. What are the conditions? What is the characteristic of matter and what has to change there? What are the characteristics of life and what has to change there? What are the characteristics of mind and what has to change there? Spread over 10 chapters. Okay? So, this is what he's saying. Before we can turn to the psychological and practical conditions, not only psychological but practical conditions, under which such a transfiguration may be changed from an essential possibility into a dynamic potentiality, we have much to consider. For we must discern not only the essential principles of the descent of Satchidananda into cosmic existence, which we have already done, but the large plan of its order here and the nature and action of the manifested power of conscious force which reigns over the conditions under which we now exist. At present, what we have first to see is that the 7 or 8 principles we have examined are essential to all cosmic creation and are there manifested or as yet unmanifested in ourselves, in this infant of a year, which we still are. For we are far yet from being the adults of evolutionary nature. The higher Trinity is the source and basis of all existence and play of existence, and all cosmos must be an expression and action of its essential reality. No universe can be merely a form of being which has sprung up and outlined itself in an absolute nullity and void and remains standing out against a non-existent emptiness. We'll discuss that. It must be either a figure of existence within the infinite existence who is beyond all figure, or it must be itself the all existence. In fact, when we unify ourself with cosmic being, we see that it is really both of these things at once. That is to say, it is the all-existent figuring himself out in an infinite series of rhythms in his own conceptive extension of himself as time and space. Moreover, we see that this cosmic action or any cosmic action is impossible without the play of an infinite force of existence which produces and regulates all these forms and movements. And that force equally presupposes or is the action of an infinite consciousness, because it is in its nature a cosmic will, determining all relations and apprehending them by its own mode of awareness. And it could not so determine and apprehend them if there were no comprehensive consciousness behind that mode of cosmic awareness to originate as well as to hold, fix and reflect through it the relations of being in the developing formation or becoming of itself, which we call a universe. Quite complex, yeah, and very detailed. We'll have to look at each word to understand what he's saying. Okay, so we start looking at each sentence. So first part is very clear. He's saying the ascetic, with whom we really don't fully agree, he has got an ideal. He wants to get the divine consciousness, but he wants to get it without the body-mind life. He wants to escape the lower and go there. He rejects the lower. Srimad is saying our ideal is not to escape the lower, but to pull down the divine consciousness from the upper hemisphere into the lower and change the conditions in lower existence itself. In the world, we want a divine life. All the imperfections that you see here, there is an evolution and slowly is going higher and higher, and one day the life in the lower hemisphere can also become divine. But before that can happen, we have to examine the nature of matter, life and mind and see what are the conditions which are not allowing it at present, and what are the conditions which need to come in so that it can become the divine life. Okay?
It's a very long sentence.
Yes.
First sentence.
Yes. Okay. And then there are two interesting words: essential possibility into a dynamic potentiality. Now, these are very interesting two words you have to understand. There can always be an essential potentiality. I am saying that it is possible, but it is not yet a dynamic potentiality. When can it become a dynamic potentiality? So, we have to make a distinction between the two. I like to put it in this way. Take a seed, okay? It's got the potential to create a tree. But if I put that on my table, there is no dynamic potentiality of ever becoming a tree. So, what are the conditions by which this possibility that I am talking about, essential possibility, can become a dynamic potentiality?
So the seed would have to be watered and placed into soil, etc.
Exactly. So what we are going to do with the seed, what are we to do with the mind? What are we to do with the life? What are we to do with the matter? That's what he is saying here. So naturally it goes to 10 chapters. Because each one is going to, and when he is going to look at that, he is going to look also at the limitations of matter, limitations of mind, and limitations of the vital, and say how they can be changed. Okay? So, long sentence, but that's it. So he's saying, before we can turn to psychological and practical conditions under which, that is part 2, or rather book 2 of the Life Divine. This is all book 1. So that discussion of the evolution goes to book 2. So this is now before that. Here he is going to examine the nature of mind, nature of life, and nature of matter. Okay. Before we can turn to the psychological and practical conditions under which such a transfiguration, changing of worldly life to divine life, may be changed from an essential possibility into a dynamic potentiality, we have much to consider. Now we can clearly say that the supermind having descended is definitely a dynamic potentiality, but it's not yet become an actuality. That actuality has to still happen. So in other places he talks of 3 possibilities, 3 stages: essential possibility, dynamic potentiality, actuality, which has not yet happened. Okay? Essential we must discern not only the essential principles of the descent of Satchidananda into cosmic existence, which we have already done. That's what he has done by showing you that Sat becomes matter, Chit becomes the vital, Supermind becomes the mind, and Ananda becomes the psychic being. That he has already told you. So he says that we have already done. But the large plan of its order here, and the nature and action of the manifested power of conscious force, which reigns over the conditions under which we now exist. So, the manifested power of consciousness, force, it has become the vital. So, what are those conditions and what is the nature and action of that vital force? Okay? That's what he's saying. Which reigns over the conditions under which we now exist. At present, what we have first to see is that the 7 or 8 principles we have examined are essential to all cosmic creation and are there manifested or as yet unmanifested in ourselves, in this infant of a year, which we still are, for we are far yet from being the adults of evolutionary nature. Now this is an interesting sentence. So what he's saying is, okay, I am saying that the higher hemisphere can become the lower hemisphere. Is there any connection? Is there a connection already between them? Then he's suggesting that maybe the Satchidananda, is it absolutely essential for it to come down here? Number 1. Secondly, is it already there in the individual? That's an important thing, because if it's there in the individual already, it can develop, like the tree out of the seed. But if the possibility of a tree is not there in the seed, then the ascetic is right and we have to give up the physical world and go away.
Why the double quotes of infant of a year?
I didn't follow.
Double quotes. Infant of a year.
Oh, okay. So infant of a year, we have to go back to the quotation that he has given from the Rig Veda, from the beginning of the chapter. Okay? Go to that, the sevenfold order being, the quotation from the Rig Veda says, okay? Yeah. Right in the beginning of the chapter. Okay? The first quotation from the Rig Veda. Yeah. He says, in the ignorance of my mind, I ask of these steps of the gods that are set within. Okay? So already the steps of the gods are set within. The all-knowing gods have taken the infant of a year and they have woven about him 7 threads to make this weft. So, the infant of the year is the undeveloped man. The adult, or rather the adolescent, is a developing man. You can call him a yogi if you want. And the adult man would be the Superman. That's why infant of a year. And he's putting in double quote because he's referring back to the Rig Veda. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Which we still are. Okay? The infant of a year, which we still are. Not Srimdev himself, but rest of mankind, yes. But Srimdev is already the adult. And almost, you could say that he is really the adult also. But not even the adolescent. Adolescent would be yogis or adolescents.
And Sri Aurobindo is above that.
Oh, yes, definitely. But he is talking of what he would say is the supramental being who lives constantly in that consciousness. The supramental race. Okay? We go to the next sentence. The higher Trinity, very clear, Satchidananda. The higher hemisphere, what he has called earlier, is the source and basis of all existence and play of existence. We stop here. The higher Trinity is the source and basis of all existence and play of existence. Play of existence, he is talking of the universe. Because there cannot be any play above. Okay? It is static condition. The higher hemisphere is static. The lower hemisphere is movement and play. So when he says play of existence, I ask the students always to give me, there are 3 words, okay? Or rather, if you want, basis of all existence and play of existence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 words. Give me 1 word for that. The cosmos. That's what it means. So, play of existence. And all cosmos must be an expression and action of an essential reality. The essential reality is the the upper hemisphere, and the lower hemisphere is nothing but a manifestation of that essential reality. Okay? Then he is explaining why it is like that. No universe can be merely a form of being which has sprung up and outlined itself in an absolute nullity and void and remains standing out against a non-existent emptiness. This sentence contradicts the Mayavada philosophy and Buddhism. Buddhism says the ultimate reality is a nullity. There is nothing. The world is also just images, mere images. So Srimdev says that's not possible. Because even the images, from where are they coming? They have to come from somewhere. There is something supporting the images. Can I have a painting without any artist doing it? Not possible. So, when I go to an exhibition hall, I see paintings. I don't see the artist. That's the universe. He has created the universe, but I don't see the creator. So, there has to be an artist who has done the creation. That's what he's saying here in this para. Okay, so no universe can be merely a form of being which has sprung up and outlined itself in an absolute nullity and void and remains standing out against a non-existent emptiness. In other words, there is a painting, but there is no artist. Not possible. So the universe must have been created by somebody. Okay, there has to be a support from that. He has said this also in different ways. He says that the movement in the universe can come out only if there is a static condition. The static condition is the one that allows the movement. The movement can't come in by itself. There has to be a static condition supporting that movement. Just like if you want, the snows and the glaciers on the mountains, which allows the river to come into existence. So if there are no snows on the mountain, static condition, there can be no river. Very similar. There has to be a static condition which allows the movement in the physical universe. This sentence you can say in so many ways. We have explained in 2-3 images. Okay, so it must either now, if that is so, then what is this universe? That he is explaining. Okay, what is the nature of this universe? It must be either a figure of existence within the infinite existence, who is beyond all figure, or it must be itself the all existence. Now, let's try and understand what he's saying here. I can give you the image again of the cinema. Okay, the cinema, the world is the image on the screen. But what is creating that? Can it exist by itself? Or is there a film in the projector, which is the reality, and this is the image of that. So is the world only an image without the reality behind? That's what the Mayavadan is saying. That's what the Buddhist is saying. Nullity. Okay? So he says that the world can be of two types. It can be only an image, or it can be a reflection of the existence, an image of the existence. Then he will tell you that spiritual experience says that it is both. Spiritual existence, the Buddhists are saying and the Mayavadins are saying, it's only images. There's nothing supporting it, which is a fact. Or if you go slightly higher up, you will say that no, this image is a representation of a reality which is there behind supporting it. He says spiritual, that's what he will tell you now in the next sentence. In fact, when we unify ourselves with cosmic being, in other words, when I have the cosmic consciousness, we see that it is really both of these things at once. It's a representation as well as there is a reality behind the appearance. Okay? The Buddhist is not admitting this. The Buddhist and the Mayavadin says they are only images which are unreal. So they are saying, look carefully and see behind the images. Then you will see that there is a reality supporting the images. Okay? It's really both of these things at once. That is to say, it is the all existence figuring himself, throwing an image of himself, making a shadow of himself, if you want, out of an infinite series of rhythms in his own conceptive extension of himself as time and space. So there is an all-existent reality which is throwing itself out in images in time and space. So you see the figures in time and space, but you must also see that there is a reality behind it. If you stop at the spiritual planes of consciousness, higher mind, element mind, intuitive mind and overmind, you will not see the reality behind the forms. You may see partially, even at the overmind level, but there's a problem there. The real forms, you will see that both are there at the supramental level. That's what he's saying. But there's another thing also. The supramental consciousness also throws its images down below. So, even in the lower planes of consciousness, you can have a glimpse of this reality. That's possible.
So when they speak of artists, painters, musicians, ascending into these higher realms, they don't get as high as supermind.
No, not supermind. Not at all. No.
Overmind at all?
Possible?
Possible.
In fact, this question is very interestingly discussed with Amal Kiran. He says, Amal is always asking, sir, tell me, please analyze this poem and tell me from where it's coming. Then he sees the quality of the vibration. And he says, this is coming from the overmind consciousness, this is coming from the intuitive mind, this is coming from the psychic, this is coming from intuitivized psychic. How does he determine all these things? By the quality of the vibration. So, that's what he does. So, none of these, even from the higher mind when you get intuitions, okay, or sometimes he says it's coming from the intraconscient. He says that it is coming from the inner vital, and sometimes he says it is psychicized inner vital. All combinations he goes on giving. But very rarely is it the supermind. But in Savitri we can confidently say that most of it is from the supramental level, the inspiration that comes down. Sometimes it may descend to the overmind level, but never below the overmind. Because he achieved the overmind very clearly in 1926.
Yes.
And he is continuing to write Savitri. After that also he is going on changing. He started writing Savitri in Baroda. At that time he didn't have the overmind consciousness. He had only the higher mind consciousness. But he went on writing, rewriting every time. Because he was testing, very interestingly, he is testing how does this change of consciousness upwards affect life in the physical world. What is the quality? What does it do? That's why he went on experimenting with Savitri. That was the one thing we are not experimenting. Yeah.
But in one letter he says that I have tried to through and through over-mentalize Savitri. I mean, he doesn't use the word supermind, he uses the word over.
Yeah, but touches of that must surely be there. Or he tried, that is, he's talking of the whole poem. Nah? But I don't think there can be any doubt that much of it came from the supermind also. There was one lady who is not here anymore, okay? She compiled a book, Quotations from Savitri, where she said that these are definitely from a higher level. Now, we are no judge of what is coming from a higher level and what is coming from lower level. Because from those writings, it depends on when he wrote that. I'm trying to over-mentalize all, because that's exactly what I'm saying, that he started writing from Baroda. So those things which he has written earlier, he is over-mentalizing them.
And you also said, I'm attempting to achieve a perfect perfection.
Yes.
It has to be supramental.
The world has yet to realize the importance of Savitri. It's fantastic. So, we come back to our text. So he's saying, the world is a representation, it's an image, but it is also the thing itself. In other words, if you want very, very practically, I have not been to New York, but suppose I have been to New York, I see a photograph of New York, and I see I know also New York, both. The world is both. It is both. It's a representation as well as a reality. That's what he's saying in this para. It is all existed, and yet it's an image also of the all existed. So if you are in the spiritual planes of consciousness, you see the images only, and you reject them as false. But if you go slightly higher up, behind the images there is a reality. It is in that sense that the physical world is real. But the world as we see it is not real. It's only images. The way we see it is only images. We are under an illusion that they are realities. They are not. Because they are there now and they disappear. Okay? So, as time and space. Moreover, we see that this cosmic action or any cosmic action is impossible without the play of an infinite force of existence which produces and regulates all these forms and movements. And that force equally presupposes or is the action of an infinite consciousness, because it's in its nature a cosmic will determining all relations and apprehending them by its own mode of awareness, and it could not so determine and apprehend them if there were no comprehensive consciousness behind that mode of cosmic awareness to originate as well as to hold, fix and reflect through it the relations of being in the developing formation or becoming of itself, which we call a universe. Now, very complex sentence, but we have to understand what he's saying. The first thing what he's saying is that the lower hemisphere is an image of the higher. That he is admitting. This is an image. But behind this image also there is a reality which is supporting it. Now, and what is that? This world can be nothing but consciousness, force, as well as a will. That's what he's saying. So, if these were not there, you could not have created a universe. What do you need to create something? You need a substance. And that substance is Sat. What do you need to create something with substance? You need the knowledge of what to do with it. So, there is consciousness. And only consciousness is enough? Only knowledge is enough? No. You need a will and a power also to do it. So, power also is there. So, Sat, Chit, Shakti. Ananda he has not discussed here, but that's a result of all these three acting together. So, you take the material and with the knowledge that you have and you will, you create the universe. Okay? So, that's what he's saying in different words. And that's why he's saying one by one, okay? He's saying, moreover we see that this cosmic action or any cosmic action, movement, is impossible without the play of an infinite force of existence. So, force of existence, note again the word existence, the substance. But substance at its subtlest, and there is a force in it, which produces and regulates all these forms and movements. Now that's an interesting thing also, which he repeats later on. So it is not only creating, but it also governs what it is creating. It's like a washing machine company which produces a machine and sells it. I have nothing to do with it now. It's not like that. This Satchidananda is creating the world and looking after it, giving it after sales. You follow what I'm saying? Okay? It's like that. That connection is there. So that he says also later on. He says, Lord, we'll come to that later on. So he says, which produces and regulates all these forms and movements. It creates them, but is also regulating and seeing that it's going in the right way. Okay? So we can picture that in many ways, but this is one way of saying it. Okay? So because it's in nature, or you can also say as someone who sells a car. Okay? But there is no after-sales service. So he has to support what he has created. So Sridhar is saying the world is created by Satchidananda, but it's also being supported. So if that without that support, it will be chaos. Okay. So and that force equally, now where is it? Moreover, we see that this cosmic action or any cosmic action is impossible without the play of an infinite force of existence. Infinite force of existence, force is power, existence is the substance, subtle substance. I told you last time that he uses 3 words for this state of substance. Existence, substance at its subtlest. Substance which is slightly denser, and the densest matter. So there's a gradation he uses these words. When he says existence, it is substance, but very subtle substance. And when he uses the word substance, you can feel it as substance. It's not very, very subtle, and it becomes matter in the lowest level. Okay? So force of existence which produces and regulates all these forms and movements. And that force equally presupposes or is the action of an infinite consciousness. If consciousness is not there, how are you going to produce the universe? You don't know how to produce it. Okay? So, and because its nature, a cosmic will, determining all relations and apprehending them by its own mode of awareness. Okay? So, he is talking here of apprehending consciousness and comprehending consciousness. Apprehending consciousness, I produce something and support it. Okay, I have produced 20 cars, maybe one Ford has produced maybe 1 million cars in India, but it is giving after-sales service, it is supporting. It's not that it is let it go. Okay, but there is something interesting after that. He is saying, and apprehending them. How can I give after-sales service unless I know the entire reality of that car? I know what can go wrong and I have got all the spares ready for it. So comprehending consciousness, I have the full knowledge of what I have produced inside me. And apprehending, I go into each car and give it the necessary repair work. I think that's what he means by apprehending and comprehending. No? It makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what he's saying. Comprehending consciousness, in other words, containing everything. All knowledge is there in that consciousness, in the supermind. But when he creates a universe, in the universe he goes into each thing separately. The divine presence is there in everything and supporting it from behind. Okay? So the language is, if you go into the language and see each word, then it becomes clear. Produces and regulates all these forms, and that force equally presupposes the action of an infinite consciousness because it's in its nature a cosmic will. Consciousness and will are really the same, Chit Shakti, determining all relations and apprehending them by its own mode of awareness. There are 2 types of awarenesses. Apprehending consciousness, entering into each thing. Okay? And it could not so determine and apprehend them if there were no comprehending consciousness behind. Okay? There is a consciousness which includes everything, and there is a consciousness which goes into everything separately. Apprehending, comprehending. Behind that mode of cosmic awareness, to originate now, to originate as well as to hold, fix and reflect through it the relations of being in the developing formation or becoming itself, which you call a universe. Now, he is repeating the same thing in different words. First of all, the supermind originates the universe. Then it holds it, fixes it, and then reflects it also through its relations of being in the developing formation. This, he says also in other words, he uses different words. First of all, it conceives. Then it creates. And then it governs. So these three words he uses in different ways. Here he has used the words originate, hold, fix and reflect. So it's the same thing. So first of all you conceive of it, the blueprint. Then you create it. And after creating, you don't let it go. You enter it and let guide it. So that's what he's saying in the para. So this is what he is saying. This is the relation between the higher hemisphere and the lower hemisphere. So he has laid the basis for a connection between the two. And if the connection is there, one day it can become not only a, what's the word he has used? Essential possibility, but it can become a dynamic, essential possibility can become a dynamic potentiality. So that's what he has said in this one-page para. Complex. Though each word you have to look, then it becomes clear. All right? Finally, consciousness being thus omniscient and omnipotent in entire luminous possession of itself, and such entire luminous possession being necessarily and in its very nature bliss, for it cannot be anything else. A vast universal self-delight must be the cause, essence, and object of cosmic existence. If there were not, says the ancient seer, this all-encompassing ether of delight of existence in which we dwell, if that delight were not our ether, then none could breathe, none could live. Okay, so this is a quotation from the Taittiriya Upanishad. I'll refer to it. This self-bliss may become subconscious, seemingly lost on the surface, but not only must it be there at our roots, all existence must be essentially a seeking and reaching out to discover and possess it. And in proportion as the creature in the cosmos finds himself, whether in will and power, or in light and knowledge, or in being and wideness, or in love and joy itself, he must awaken to something of the secret ecstasy. Joy of being, delight of realization by knowledge, rapture of possession by will, and power or creative force, ecstasy of union in love and joy are the highest terms of expanding life, because they are the essence of existence itself in its hidden roots as on its yet unseen heights. Wherever then cosmic existence manifests itself, these three must be behind and within it. Just now he has told you that it is both. It's an image as well as a reality. Now he is explaining that wherever this cosmic existence is there, manifests itself, the image is there, but these three realities must be there. What are the three realities? Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda.
I'd like to ask about wherever this cosmic existence manifests.
Yeah.
Wherever?
Yeah. This cosmic existence manifests itself. The cosmic existence is a subtle substance. When it manifests itself, it becomes the universe.
So it could be many worlds.
Oh yes.
Not only here.
Oh yes, absolutely. This is only one aspect. To think that this is your cosmos is the only creation is a stupidity. He could create so many. In fact, in the he has written a small booklet called The Philosophy of the Upanishads. And there he has compared God creating the universe to Shakespeare creating his plays. So Shakespeare has created 25 plays, let's say. Could he have created more? Of course he could have created more. He could have created so many things which are there in his mind. He didn't. So he has a choice to do that. Or he has already done it somewhere. Maybe he has written something we don't know. It's lying in his drawer somewhere. So that comparison is there. So that's what it means. Of course it can be many, many cosmoses. It need not be only one. Okay? Now this is interesting what he's saying. We'll have a quick look at it. Okay, fine. Finally, so he has said that consciousness and will are the same. Consciousness, Chit. Now he introduces Ananda. Finally, consciousness being thus omniscient and omnipotent. Omniscient, knowledge, Chit. Omnipotent, Shakti, will, okay, force, in entire luminous possession of itself. It is completely master of itself. We may think, to understand the importance of what he's saying, think of yourself. Are you in possession of yourself? Absolutely not. Our body-mind life is controlling us. But there, it is in full control of itself. Okay? So, self-possessed. He uses the word self-possessed. Here he's saying luminous possession of itself. And such entire luminous possession being necessarily and in its very nature bliss. So, this requires a little bit of discussion. Okay, if there is consciousness and force, he is saying it is necessarily to be bliss if it is infinite. So, that would take us into some other area altogether. So, we'll take it for granted and go ahead with the. Okay. For it cannot be anything else. A vast universal self-delight must be the cause, essence, and object of cosmic existence. So the question arises, where this upper hemisphere is there self-sufficient, why does it need to create a universe? What is the need? It has got everything. The only answer is that it is for the sake of Ananda, for creation. Creation is Ananda. He says this also elsewhere, right in the beginning, that when he speaks of the delight of existence, the problem and the solution. The only reason for which he is creating the universe is Ananda. And it's interesting because if you see the reverse, okay, every creation on earth, even on earth, always associated with Ananda. Whether it be a poet creating, whether it be a painter creating, or whether it be an artist creating, or an architect creating building, it always gives you Ananda. Any creation will give you Ananda. Is it not true?
I wonder about those darkest creations of modern art, modern music.
Music?
They don't give me Ananda. Not the dark.
Have you created music? Or are you just...
No, listening.
No, I'm talking of creating.
The one who has created even those apparently dark ones, he has enjoyed doing
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Got it. Okay.
Created. Okay, so he's saying that it can be, it's a vast universal self-delight must be the cause, essence, and object of cosmic creation. If there were not, says the ancient seer, the Taittiriya Upanishad, this all-encompassing ether of delight of existence in which we dwell, if that delight were not our ether, then none could breathe, none could live. Okay? The reference, I have not put the reference, but it is there from the Taittiriya Upanishad. I should enter it, I will enter it next time.
Ko hevanyat kaf pranyat yadesha akasha anando nasyat.
That's right. There's another phrase also which is very similar, but that without Ananda there could be no creation. He could not even breathe. The very existence is because of Ananda. That's what it is.
This is the main problem of science, not accepting ether.
Not accepting?
Ether.
Yeah.
They don't accept ether.
In fact, the concept of Ananda is not there in science, isn't it? Now they have come to consciousness. That much they have come. First of all, they said Sat, matter. Now we have come to consciousness. And force also they admit. But the Ananda aspect has not yet come to science. It has to come one day. So, this self-bliss may become subconscious. Now, he is describing what are the grades of this self-bliss, okay? And not the word self-bliss. It's not something coming from outside or there is no cause for it. It's a self-caused thing. May become subconscious, as in matter, seemingly lost on the surface, but not only must it be there at our roots, even in matter it is there. All existence must be essentially a seeking and reaching out to discover and possess it. If you think of all the vital activities that we do, it's nothing but seeking Ananda, but because the vital is impure, it seeks pleasure instead of Ananda. But it's a seeking for Ananda itself. Must essentially be a seeking and reaching out to discover and possess it. And in proportion as the creature in the universe finds himself, whether in will and power, or in light and knowledge, or in being and wideness, or in love and joy itself, he must awaken to something of the secret ecstasy. Now this is interesting. What's he talking about? He is saying, whether in will and power, or in light and knowledge. Light and knowledge only without will and power is what the ascetic is doing. Okay? Then, what the tantric is doing also, will and power. Okay? So, and in being and wideness, okay? Being and wideness also the self, the Jnana Yoga path. Or in love and joy itself. He is also talking of the different paths, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Okay? So, in Jnana Yoga, you end up with light and knowledge, okay? And in being and wideness, or in love and joy itself. So, you can get these things differently, but you can also get them all together. He must awaken to something of the secret ecstasy, joy of being, delight of realization by knowledge, rapture of possession by will, and power of creative force. Ecstasy of union in love and joy are the highest terms of expanding life because they are the essence of existence itself in its hidden roots as on its yet unseen heights. Wherever then cosmic existence manifests itself, these three must be behind and within it. So, whatever you do, there can be different, but at the highest level, there has to be knowledge, there has to be power, and there has to be Ananda. That's what he's saying. But at the lower levels, you can have only knowledge and light without power and Ananda. Or you can have love and delight without knowledge. That also is possible. The Jnana Yogi gets light and knowledge. Same as using the words light and knowledge. And he also gets being and wideness. Okay? That also he gets. Or in love and joy itself. Love and joy, the path of Ananda. He must awaken to something of the secret ecstasy. Something can already be there. Joy of being, delight of realization by knowledge, rapture of possession by will, and power or creative force. Ecstasy of union in love and joy. So these are all different things can be experienced differently, but in Sremdas Yoga, you have to get all the things. All. You have to get power, you have to get consciousness, you have to get knowledge, you have to get power, you have to also get Ananda.
And when Savitri meets the three Madonnas, one is always lacking in something.
Yes. In fact, Savitri first wants to disappear into the infinite.
Yes.
Then the voice challenges her. Is this what report will you give when you go back to? So, you have to not go away from the physical world, but you have to be in the physical. This is interesting because that's exactly what happened to Mother. She is not being allowed to remain always in the higher consciousness. Her work is to transform the lower. So she's saying, I am not being allowed to remain. I am being asked to remain in the lower consciousness. This is very interesting. This is what happened to Ramakrishna also. Don't be there all the time in a trance. It won't do. You have to come down here and help the others also. Okay? It happened to Ramana Maharshi also. He wanted to go up to the hill. But the Divine Mother stopped him and put her legs across the path and said, go down. Why are you going up? Go down. Do your work in the physical world here. So that's what we're saying. All the three must be there. And if you go up only, you may get wideness and all that. But what about the power? You have to have the power and bring it down here into the physical world.
But if you see the world as the Buddhists, the Vedantas,
Yeah.
where is the Ananda?
It's possible to get Ananda even at the higher mind level. Something is possible. There are many people who experience Ananda also. Even our Sadguru, the famous Sadguru, when he went to the higher level of consciousness, he had a cosmic consciousness. His description is clear. He had a cosmic consciousness, means higher mind, maybe a little above. But he had tremendous Ananda. He says, my whole shirt was wet with tears.
I heard that firsthand.
Yes, that's right. So it is possible to have Ananda. Okay? You can.
I was somebody who was very macho, and tears and me were like totally opposite things.
Exactly.
But when that experience happened, he said, I felt that it was just 15-20 minutes, but 3 or 4 hours had passed, and my whole shirt was wet with tears.
Yes. And that was the
He
first.
used the phrase, I feel a little exaggeratingly, he said, each cell of my body was bursting with ecstasy.
Yes. And that was the first time. Anmol. Second time, he thought it was several hours, but 13 days. He was in trance.
He was just sitting at the dining table and he went.
That's right.
And by the time he came out, people had put mala around him
Yes.
or something.
Here is someone exceptional, and a huge crowd had gathered.
This is Sadguru.
Yeah.
I heard this firsthand. He was telling this in a live meeting.
Yeah. In fact, the YouTube is full of his things. Okay.
I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've seen some.
But the thing is, he does not believe in the personal aspect of the divine. He has only the experience of the impersonal aspect.
He believes in Shiva.
Yeah, but he says God is your imagination. God is a creation of your mind.
I have seen one video of his, not to go too much into this, in Kedarnath temple. And the aarti is going on and he just is uncontrollably, he's just weeping literally. So that devotion for Shiva is there.